I did something 12 months ago that seemed completely insane. I sold my condo, I ditched my truck, and I left my Alaska dream behind. I bought a one-way ticket to the Southern Hemisphere. Welcome to my channel. I'm Island Punk. I'm here at the beautiful Alba Mauritius Bed and Breakfast in Belmar. And I am celebrating today because it's been 1 year. And I'm going to be talking about the brutal realities of my first year overseas, the fear, the identity collapse, the scams that I got into, the bureaucracy, the cost, the healthcare, and how I think you can survive it. If you're a Gen Xer sitting at home wondering if you've got the nerve to escape the machine, this episode is for you. Because, let's face it, the cost of regret far exceeds the cost of fear. Living overseas is often sold to us as a postcard dream. Total BS. In reality, it's a brutal process. Don't want to fall out the window. It's a brutal process of social realism and identity collapse. Back home, we cling to our these social scripts, the titles and credit scores and our trucks and the markers of who we used to be. But when you land in a completely foreign country, the world owes you absolutely nothing. And if you want to recreate your life, this kind of rebirth requires the cold, necessary destruction of the self you once knew. And one way to do that is to move across the planet. If you're new here, I'm Island Punk, and I did something drastic. I turned in my snowy Alaska life for an apartment right across from the beach and a Suzuki 125 scooter. I live on the cheap. I write about emotional well-being, and I map out this weird, unpredictable Gen X-Xpat journey. If that's your vibe, hit subscribe. Join me in this rebellion. No corporate BS here, just real talk. And to those of you who have been riding with me since day one, thank you. Seriously, you keep the ship sailing. So, when I first stepped off the plane in Mauritius, it was liberating. No reputation, no CV, nothing to prove, nothing to do, actually. But man, it was deeply disorienting. You find yourself standing in a new place with absolutely no identity markers. Well, okay. I didn't leave everything behind. I brought 2 pairs of Doc Marten sandals, a Joan Jett t-shirt, and a small photo album of my kids. That's it. In fact, most of the other clothes that I packed, I still have in the suitcase a year later. Everything here is different for a good reason. It feels a bit like leaving home when you're a teenager or in your early 20s. Remember that? That's what we did as Gen Xers. Yes, we left home. We had to. And honestly, we wanted to. We were the latchkey kids, the brat pack kids who got our driver's license as soon as we turned 16. We did not graduate, or we did graduate, but either way, we packed a bag and left as soon as we could, ready to invent our own lives from scratch. This first year in Mauritius, same exact energy. But here's the thing that they don't tell you. When you drop yourself into a completely new environment, your nervous system goes into overdrive. You experience a physically heightened state of awareness, and it reads as high anxiety. I knew intellectually that Mauritius was one of the safest places on the planet. That didn't matter. My brain remained trapped in a state of fear for several months. My physiological breakthrough didn't even happen in Mauritius. It happened because of a bureaucratic loophole. 2 months in, I needed an exit ticket to satisfy immigration rules. So I booked a 1-week trip to Madagascar, which is a close neighbor. Now, Madagascar is a whole different beast. It's one of the poorest countries on the planet. The roads are notoriously dangerous. The cities are chaotic, crowded, and they don't speak English. I wasn't with a tour group. It was just me and a local guide. Day one, of course, our vehicle breaks down on the side of the road, out in the middle of nowhere. We were able to coast down the hill to a little agricultural village where we waited. It took 5 hours for a replacement vehicle to arrive. For 5 hours, I sat there in a tiny remote village and I watched. I watched children playing, young men fixing old cars, residents working in the fields, shopkeepers selling basic goods. I didn't understand a single word they were saying, but I knew what they were saying. They were happy, generous, kind, funny, incredibly resilient people. They're living their lives without a single drop of the ease, the modern comfort, the safety nets that we take for granted. The roads on that trip never got any better, but my nervous system did. I saw something I desperately needed to see. I saw humanity. When I flew back to Mauritius after that week, something had shifted. I didn't feel like a stranger anymore. I returned home to Mauritius, home. I belonged here. It was an odd psychological pivot, but it cured my fear and my outsiderness. Another major shift this year was my attitude toward work. When I left Alaska, I thought for sure I could just claim retirement, hang up the coat, sit on the beach, relax. And it turns out I can't. My brain doesn't work that way. I still work. I write my daily Substack journal. I produce these YouTube videos. I wrote a book for journaling called Mental Wealth Journey, which is out on Amazon, by the way, focusing on how journaling can build self-awareness and fix your connection with yourself. Another content creator, Amy Palmer, look her up, coined a term for this time of our lives that I absolutely love: pre-retirement. Pre-retirement. It's that weird, beautiful space between your old career and total retirement. You're done working for the man, but you're still creating, you're still generating. And honestly, at 58, my old career was completely unsustainable. Each passing year took more than a year away from my lifespan. It wore me down to the bone, to the point where a short summer break wasn't enough to recover. But I kept grinding down, saving and waiting for that magical age of 65. And then came the US elections, seeing my own teaching colleagues back in Alaska proudly celebrate voting for a convicted felon, treating a pedophile and a criminal grifter like a spiritual advisor. That was the final rock in my backpack. I couldn't lift the weight anymore. Age, combined with stress-related health challenges and the harsh Alaska environment, and I was done. I needed a rest, some sunshine, community, peace, and if I'm going to work now, it's at a much, much slower pace, my pace. So let's talk about the monsters under the bed. The pre-departure fear. Yes, I remember it well. The fears I left the US with were debilitating. They were excruciating. They were paralyzing. Fear of failure, which I don't even know what that would be. Losing all my money, that makes sense. Getting kidnapped and being held for ransom, so violence, medical emergencies, bait and switch, which actually happens. Sickness, like maybe I'll catch malaria or Ebola. And losing my professional identity. But let me tell you something I've learned after 365 days on the outside. The cost of resentment and lifelong regret would exceed the cost of missing your old life. Take the fear of money, losing all your money. Everyone has it. My fixed income is so small. In the US, I couldn't survive on it without a grinding full-time job. Here, I live a comfortable life on $1,500 US a month. And about that fear of discomfort, the heat, the bugs, well, you adapt. Fear of missing your stuff, selling the condo, selling the truck, wiping out the debt. That is literally the fuel that funded my freedom. That stuff was just an anchor. And fear of not liking it, well, guess what? You can always go home. Or do what I did. I keep a backup of 2 other countries you find acceptable and move there instead. And finally, the fear of being old and alone. Honestly, age has been my superpower out here. Because I'm a Gen Xer in my 50s and I'm not frantically trying to prove myself to anyone anymore. I'm not chasing a superficial bucket list. The real adventure for me is having patience and wisdom to actually get to know a new culture, to understand Hindu and Muslim and Buddhist traditions. To listen with interest and curiosity without trying to prove something, well, that's where I'm at. We're Gen X. We've survived latchkey childhood, shifting economies, and the rise of the digital age. We've overcome so much already. The hardest part is just letting go of the autoplay track, breaking the pattern, escaping the comfort of the familiar. Okay, so the scams, the scooter, and the bureaucracy. Now, don't get it twisted. This year wasn't a cakewalk. I have not had an easy 12 months. I actually had to break a 12-month lease early because I was being scammed with the utility costs. I kept getting a bill that was ridiculously overpriced. So yes, folks, scammers exist overseas just as much as they do anywhere. I had to learn the hard way that there is a tourist price, a local price, and a scam price. And your job is to figure out how to get the local price. My biggest leap of freedom was deciding to buy a scooter instead of relying on public transportation. It gives me an instant on-demand freedom, but it comes with some upfront costs and the ultimate test of endurance, getting a Mauritius driver's license. Foreign bureaucracies hit different anywhere in the world. They don't care how you did things back home. I quickly realized that getting angry or ruminating over my frustrations change absolutely nothing. It's wasted energy. I had to rechannel that anger into learning their rules, navigating their systems, and aggressively throwing out my expectations. To give you perspective, it took 4 separate trips to the bank to open a basic account. 3 trips to the cell phone company. And I think I'm on trip number 7 or 8 to the transportation office to finalize my scooter license and endorsement, because you need a license and an endorsement. So is it worth it? Absolutely. I ride all over this island now. My Suzuki 125 gets 110 miles to the gallon, and cruising along the coastline, listening to my favorite tunes with the ocean breeze is pure joy. But there's a catch to that ride. The roads, they started centuries ago as walking paths and ox cart trails under colonial rule. So they were only formalized into modern roadways after independence in 1968. And trust me, the islanders still treat them like walking paths. People will literally stop and park in the middle of the road, sometimes just to visit with somebody walking by. So half the time, I have no idea what the driver in front of me is doing. But that's not my job. My job is to travel cautiously and safely, go with the flow. Sometimes the traffic looks like a chaotic dance floor, and other times it's a quiet breeze. But people are polite, and in a year I've had almost no instances of road rage or people honking at me or cutting me off. I've seen 2 accidents and a car in the ditch and a scooter that hit something. All instances, no one was hurt. And that brings me to getting hurt and healthcare. Let's face it, when you are our age, you have to start thinking about maintenance. And so when you're overseas, just like at home, there'll be accidents and injuries and illnesses wherever you go. And for that, I've learned out here, retirees have 3 options to handle healthcare. Option 1 is pay out of pocket for private clinics and doctors. Option 2, shell out for private insurance. And option 3, roll the dice with the free public clinics and hospitals. So, I've tested 2 of these tracks. First, I went to the private out-of-pocket clinic for dental and eye care. The facilities were really modern, and the prices dirt cheap compared to the American medical racket, and it is a racket. I paid $45 for a filling and a cleaning. A full eye exam set me back $25. Back home, that's not even a copay with insurance. But then things got real. I got into a street fight with a local stray cat, and she won. By the time I finally yanked this psycho feline off my leg, she had bitten me 6 times and used my leg as a personal scratching post. It was time to test option number 3. I limped to the public clinic with about maybe a mile from my apartment. It was clean and quiet, and honestly, like only a couple people were there. The doctor gave me a tetanus shot, wrapped up my shredded leg, and handed me a referral script for the main hospital. All free. She told me to take a cab, get a blood test, grab some oral antibiotics, and she said cheerfully, be prepared to spend the night. So I took a cab to the public hospital. Let me tell you, this was not your sterile corporate American hospital with gleaming white walls and a staff hiding behind plexiglass walls and computer screens. No, it was crowded. It was chaotic. But it was oddly quiet. People sat quietly and whispered. I spent a couple hours standing in different lines, at one point striking up a conversation with this local guy whose foot had just been ran over. I watched a cat make its way through the courtyard and into an office through an open window. The staff were polite and, thankfully, mostly spoke English. But I was clearly the odd man out. I didn't see other foreigners in the building. And because of that, the paperwork got interesting. I was asked for my visa papers multiple times to prove I was actually legal and qualified to use their services. And under my retirement visa, I am. After sweating it out in a packed waiting room for a couple hours, the doctor called my name and the verdict, blood tests came back clean, no crazy infections. They handed me antibiotics for free, told me to follow up at the local clinic in 10 days and sent me on my way. Total cost, $0. In fact, 78 countries offer free or heavily subsidized universal health care. In Mauritius, the treatment was crowded but offered immediate quality service. And the humanity is definitely there. Now, let's talk brass tacks, money. Mauritius is incredible, but it is not the cheapest place on the planet, or even in the Southern Hemisphere. I knew what I was getting into. Nearly everything here is imported, especially electronics and vehicles. But if you avoid buying luxury purchases, it's incredibly manageable. Here's my actual monthly budget. My total cost of living is $1,500 per month. My housing is right around $500, and that includes all the utilities and internet and housekeeping. My food is around $600 a month. Keep in mind, I don't drink alcohol and I eat out about once a week. I buy local produce, fresh fish, poultry, and eggs, which are abundant and inexpensive. Everything else, about $400 a month. That includes health club, phone bill, fuel for the bike, my clothing, art supplies, and just whatever I fancy. Another important firsthand experience is language. Mauritius lists English as its official language for about 80% of business that has held up for me. But I've definitely found myself in a few situations where I didn't fully grasp what I was agreeing to, and it got lost into some weeds, and I kind of got into hot water with it. There's a bus behind me. Word to the wise, just learning French or French Creole is a massive benefit here, and it is my next goal for this upcoming year. So, what's the final verdict after year one? Have the rose-colored glasses shattered? Well, they haven't shattered, but I've adjusted to the light. After a year, I found a new familiar. Just like in the States, I wake up, I enjoy the birds in the morning, I visit with my neighbors, I hang out at my favorite local spots, and I've even had several local expat cats adopt me. Most expats say this, and I'm going to join the chorus. The people here are genuinely kind. They have an incredible sense of humor. They live deeply for their families and spiritual traditions. And they've shown this random American outsider immense generosity of time and spirit. If you're feeling stuck, if you're tired of the American doom loop, maybe it's time to start planning your own escape. If you want to dig deeper into the mental shifts required to pull this off, grab my book, Mental Wealth Journey, over on Amazon. It's a deep dive into using journaling for self-awareness so you don't lose your mind when your identity collapses overseas. If you want to read my raw, unfiltered thoughts daily, subscribe to my Substack. Or if you just want to support an independent creator keeping it real, buy me a coffee. All the links are down in the description. All right, crew. Don't let the system grind you down. Hit that subscribe button, join the rebellion, and flip the script on what the rest of your life is supposed to look like. Thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks for hanging out for my 1-year check-in. Until next time, lead, follow, or get out of the way.